Hello, and welcome to the Living Ocean podcast. My name is Rachel, the host, and today I have a guest interview with Brandon Bozarth. And Brandon is the founder of Integrated Somatic Inquiry, which is ISI, a process that deals with the root cause of our mental, emotional suffering and physical disease. Pairing ISI with his extensive understanding of Germanic Healing Knowledge, GHK, Brandon deals with healing beyond the root cause level, where his clients don't just experience physical healing, they experience a deep sense of peace and freedom. Working with over 1,000 clients in over 20 countries, his work has been taught in workshops, retreats, stages, and online courses all over the world over the past 9 years. His clients have seen improvements and have resolved depression, cancer, arthritis, psychosis, anxiety, skin rashes, grief, anxiety, IBS, and many other psychosomatic symptoms. And I'm really excited to have this conversation today, Brandon. Just want to welcome you on the show.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. And it's always funny listening to my own bio. It's like, man, that makes me sound so cool. But I never think about that bio because I never, unless I'm on a podcast, I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, that's a thing. So
Totally. And I've personally been in Brandon's work before, both with in the circle and as well with him and Natalie. And I've personally felt so much transformation. And personally, like a lot of my testimony includes being in these spaces and really allowing for truth to just purify me. And I really think your work helps bring people to deeper truth in a really compassionate, honest, and open way. And the people in your spaces are so awesome. And so I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and helping people get free, honestly. Yeah. Awesome. So one of the things I really that I kept hearing when we booked this conversation was about building a house, building a home. Yeah, and just like, I feel like when people are exploring themselves, whether it be through personal work or if they're like coming home to Christ and to faith in a new way, which is like something that's massively happening right now. And I think that creating a foundation for people is something that I really feel is important, not just in this conversation, but in general. And there was some scripture if you don't mind. Do you mind if I share it?
Of course.
So it kept coming up, and it's in Matthew 7:24-27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rock came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash.
Yeah, I love it so much. There's a lot of directions I could take that. Do you have an idea of where you want to go with that?
I have some questions here, but I'll let you flow. I'm happy to go wherever you'd like to go.
Well, it just reminded me of this image. I remember I saw this on Instagram and I thought it was brilliant, of a triangle. And you have at the bottom, the base points, it's a two-dimensional triangle. You have a husband and wife, or you could say really any relationship, but we'll use marriage. So you have husband and wife. And then at the top, you have God at that pinnacle point. And the closer you are to God, the closer you are to each other. And it's the difference between, oh, my foundation is built on you and your happiness, or pleasing you, or getting love from you, or getting safety from you, all the things that I actually can only get in God, which you'll always fail me. And then typically if my needs aren't met in the way that, especially in a lot of like attachment theory spaces, maybe some in kind of like new age spaces, but more in the psychological, scientific world of well, if everyone can just get everything they want and their preferences, and it's kind of a trade-off, and you get your love language met all the time, then your relationship will work. Well, again, notice the relationship is built on another human and what they do or do not do, which will have to eventually make them into an idol. You'll have to go, okay, who you're being towards me is going to determine if I can feel love or acceptance or say safety, or all of these qualities that as soon as you ascribe them to another person, it's like you're saying they're the gatekeeper, right? It's like they have love, connection, safety in their fanny pack, and you're like, okay, just please give it to me. Like, give me a word of affirmation, and I'll feel good about myself. Which, if, and I know you know this, but when you're undone in the presence of God, you never. It's impossible to have the thought, man, I need my love language fulfilled right now. Man, if she would just give me a little more acknowledgement, I'd feel complete and whole. It's laughable, right? It's totally laughable. So instead of putting the focus on the person when there's disconnection, like going to the person, we go to God. And when two people are doing that together, you have a relationship where the purpose of it is to glorify God, is to thank God, to be closer to God. And therefore, all of the deception and untruths start to be illuminated and fall away. And that allows for more intimacy in the actual relationship. And so for me, that's what having a firm foundation is. It's not building my
Mm,
relationship on another person and their capacity to love, which will never be equal to God's capacity to love, because God can only love. There's no change. There's no, faulting or altering. It's just, yeah, the absolute, we could say, like, limit of the possibility of love. And so, yeah, just when you said foundation, I go, oh, what makes that a foundation in a relationship? And it's something like that is what will get you through the hard times, the wind, the rain, etc.
totally. I really like that, the analogy with the triangle as well. And, it can also be an experience, that steadiness we have, it can also be really edifying as well, right? I've noticed that um, the deeper I go into a relationship with God, it's like, whoa, the places where before I felt like I could hide, like there is no room for that in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of showing up to the altar and being honest. And I do feel like ISI helped me get more comfortable with being honest. I think a lot of the ways that we can stay stuck is actually through like being stagnant or being
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in our own
Mm-hmm.
little place that we are used to. And I think that Jesus really takes that, like, we don't really stay still when
Mm-hmm.
there's deep stillness, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also this movement that starts to happen when we start to get convicted, and through that relationship. So I can imagine, I'm not in a relationship right now, so I can imagine it being in a partnership like marriage, it being very interesting. Would you like to share more of it about that?
I mean, yeah, I'll just say one thing on it. It's so simple as well. Like Natalie and I, we just worship together. It's like we'll be in the presence of God together, and this again, when you're undone and in the presence of God, you don't think, man, I I need something from my partner. Like you literally want for nothing, right?
Mm,
And so it's interesting because the paradox is I together, if we're feeling stagnant or disconnected, we'll go to God together, but then we won't have the impulse to, like, okay, now I can get something from her, or it's no, my wife doesn't have to do anything. There's nothing she doesn't have to do anything. Like, I need nothing, and I don't even need to connect because I'm so
mm,
deeply in connection, right? So it just takes so much of the, here are your relationship strategies that, are gonna, create more connection. And it's like, create connection. So that's my job. That's even too much effort. When you're anchored in
hmm,
Christ, it's not your job to go create connection. How can I create a connection? Like, where's the connection? What are the steps to creating connection? No, in my true identity, I'm connected. I am in connection all the time until I disagree, until I deceive myself out of it. And so that's the free will part. That's why I think ISI is so important, because I still have the freedom, I'm not a robot, to disagree with who I so clearly am in Christ.
Mm.
And that's where we can, keep suffering of our own will, right?
Mm, totally. Yeah, it's so much more simple. And coming from being in a lot of the polarity, divine union stuff, and then coming into your course exposed, I feel like it was just such a good. I feel like I was just able to repetitively go to the depths and like your layers of truth telling that you talk about,
Mm-hmm.
like just get to the core of what's really present. And what I've noticed as a reflection now is I'm able to be in connections, whether it is romantic or in even just in daily life. Not only am I
Mm-hmm.
able to go there with people, but people are actually able to go there with me more in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
their own suffering. I've noticed there's like a deeper well, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I've always had that kind of ability with people, but it's gotten even like, oh my god, I feel like I can just say all this stuff with
Mm-hmm.
you. And so it's a mirror type thing, right? Like it
Mm-hmm.
goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like people are always going to hear where you're coming from, not what you're saying, right? And so when
Oh.
you're available for truth telling, because that's where you're coming from, they're going to go, "Oh, you're making it safe for me to meet you there." So very often when you shift, they shift because everyone, they might not know it consciously, but everyone wants to be in the truth and tell the truth and not have to adapt or deny or justify or perform, right? All of that is draining. And you could say it kind of like eats at your soul. It's like, oh, it's, and no one can escape that. There's a law. It's the
Yeah.
conscience that's been placed into everyone. So it's like, no, there is a conscience. There's a moral wall that we will hit if we're not in the truth. And so that's why I like to equate ISI to, it's really just radical truth telling. It's just really
Mhm.
getting really honest and being able to tell the truth about what you're experiencing because um, the truth in of itself is whole and complete. And when you're there, you don't need all the excess in your life. That was a compensation. You find the connection in the truth. You find the safe. People think, oh, the truth hurts or it's vulnerable to tell the truth. This is what I've been talking about recently. Is the truth vulnerable? I mean, who is the truth embodied? Christ. Is he vulnerable? Another definition of something that's vulnerable is a building that doesn't have integrity. It could fall very easily.
Mm.
It's not structurally sound. That's the actual more physical definition of vulnerable. So is the eternal logos just this vulnerable, weak little thing? No, truth is not vulnerable. Truth is not scary. Truth is not painful. I mean, these are the greatest lies. It's like saying the good is bad. It doesn't make any sense. So this keeps people like, oh, it's so scary if I tell the truth. No, that's the lie. It's actually scary if you keep lying and not telling the truth in whatever
Mhm.
context that you're referring to. That's the scary thing because then you're going to believe the good is bad for the rest of your life and you're not going to experience what's truly good. And what comes with what's truly good? Love, joy, connection, passion, inspiration, energy, aliveness, all the fruits of the spirit as well, right?
Mhm.
Self-control, discernment. And yeah, so I like to say it's like when you're in the truth fully, you will feel invulnerable. And you can't hurt someone with the truth because the truth is not it's not limiting. In fact, it's liberating.
Mm.
And so if someone else has a response to some truth that you're sharing, which we can get into the distinction between my truth and the truth, because especially in New Age spirituality, it's like, well, just telling me your truth. And my truth is I'm a giraffe and I'm not a human. And it's like, there's a difference between my truth and the truth. So we don't want it to get hijacked. The crux of it, though, is honesty. It's self-honesty. Saying that I'm a giraffe or I'm a black woman. That's my identity. I'm not being honest with myself. And you can't force someone to be honest. So for them saying that's my truth, in that case, no, it's not. It's actually a lie that I'm presenting as a truth. Um, so I
Hmm.
would even question there's such a thing as my truth that is independent from the truth. No, there's just the truth. There's not some other existing. I can have perspective. I can have a point of view, but it can be wrong,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, there's a lot of tangents that I'm kind of doors that I'm opening here. So I'll throw it back to you.
No, I like it, and I like the quality of peace intertwined in what you're speaking to, because a lot of people get like the sword, and I like the sword, like I like the sword of truth. I know it can cut, but it's like there's kind of an addiction almost to like it involving pain, and I love that
Yeah.
you're refining it. So that's really cool. Yeah. Um, I'm actually curious, and we can go in any direction. But one of the things that a lot of people have asked me since starting this podcast is, and also sisters who have come to me, is so they're on this path of truth. They're coming home. They're um, refining or building a relationship with Christ for the first time. And they're actually noticing an increase in their symptoms or chronic diseases that are getting worse and appearing to get worse in a sense. And what's that? So, like, what would, from your perspective in German New Medicine and ISI, what's that relationship with symptoms and truth, and sometimes the opposite of what we think we were going to get from
this
something?
is so great. This is so great. So the majority of the time, not every time, but German New Medicine, Germanic Healing Knowledge tells us, and this is just based on observation. This isn't a like religion. This isn't an opinion. This is based on 40,000, now over 50,000 CT scans. There is always an imprint, we can call it, what's a hammer foci is what it's called, on the part of the brain that controls the organ that's having the symptom or the disease. So if I have a runny nose, if I scan my brain, there's something in my brain called the brain relay. And right on that brain relay, there's going to be this little circle with concentric rings, kind of like rings in a tree, if you cut a tree. And Dr. Hammer interviewed these 40,000 people when he discovered this. First, he had to go, wait, is this an artifact? Is this just a shadow? Or is this actually on the brain? And he got it verified by some CT specialist who took it all these different angles, said, no, that's actually on the brain. You're seeing something. He found that no matter the disease, there's always a connection between the brain and the organ. And then when he started interviewing the people, he found, let's say, everyone, I'll use breast cancer, for example, everyone that had breast cancer. So let's do glandular breast cancer, which would be a nest. I think this is the nest. I get these confused. Nest worry or severe separation or separation conflict. I think it's nest worry. I could be wrong on that, but the example will work anyway. What we call a nest worry conflict, and this is biological language. As an example, it's a worry, a sudden, shocking, overwhelming, isolating experience around being really worried about your child. And when those three criteria of being isolated and overwhelmed and caught off guard and a sense of powerlessness all hit, which people would call a trauma typically, they all hit at once, it affects the brain. It turns on an adaptation. And in this case, it's going to be a kind of cell, I'm mixing these two up, so my GM people are going to correct me on this. It's either cell loss or cell proliferation. There's two responses the body can do. Cell proliferation is usually to increase like a glandular substance or digestive juice or breast milk. Cell loss is usually to widen and open an area for more blood flow or to, let's say, numb out an experience physically. But regardless, the adaptations are always serving the organism. It's always to help the organism survive and adapt, which is another way to say all symptoms are here for me and not against me. And this is an attribute of God, and we can see God if we zoom into biology and we stop interpreting it through this medieval lens that there's these secret, evil, invisible creatures that we could call, like demons, for example, that are responsible for all my illness. And it's like they've taken a spiritual reality that, again, that can definitely be true. There could be spirits and demons and all these things that we can't see. I'm not denying that. But they've taken that and superimposed it on the biology. But if God has created all life and nature, then, this is in Romans, I don't remember the exact passage, but it's essentially saying God's revealed himself in Jesus and in nature. And if you can look close enough into life itself, nature itself, you'll see the nature and qualities of God. And German medicine has been the first time I've ever seen a body of work that doesn't have, at least in its own findings, not one exception to these laws, that there's always, before any symptom, an event that occurs in the psyche, a trauma, that then affects the brain, that then affects the organ. Now we're getting out of victimhood. Now we're not saying, oh, it's just something out there that wanted to kill me, like a invisible virus that's never truly been isolated. Oh, that's what that it just wants to, destroy my cells just for no good reason. And we don't see this in nature. You don't see an animal just killing for fun or destroying for fun, right? So anyway, I'll digress. To bring it full circle, remind me of your initial question so I stay on track.
Yeah, so the
increase in symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in German new medicine, there's two phases to an adaptation, cold and hot. Cold is typically when you're conflict active. Great. It was just my birthday a week ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Cold phase is typically there's no symptoms. These are things like osteoporosis, for example, loss of bone density, so cell necrosis. In Western medicine, they call these two different disease categories. In German new medicine, they say it's a biphasic pattern. Now, what's interesting is the biphasic pattern actually literally describes the story of Christ. I'm going to do a whole presentation on this, literally to the fall, the conflict activity, the epicrisis being this massive healing event, the crucifixion, and then the healing phase being the resurrection, and then the secondary healing phase is once Christ left and the Holy Spirit poured out, right? It's this perfect echo of this Christ journey. Yeah, it's going to be really cool. So I'm excited about that. But the second phase is what the people that have reached out to you would be experiencing, these hot symptoms or warm symptoms. These only happen in what we call a repair phase or a healing phase. So trauma happens, adaptation turns on. Let's say I have a loss in bone marrow. In German new medicine, that would be from a trauma that was self-devaluing. So I felt like, I'm just nothing. I'm worthless. It's like the deepest form. I shouldn't even be here, right? This deepest form of self-devaluation. So some traumas, some event happened. My perception of it, my internal reaction, you could say, to that event was to perceive it as this really intense form of self-evaluation. Now there's this bone, and that's going to hit the part of my brain that governs bone marrow. And I'm going to have cell loss. Why do I have cell loss? If it's all for me, that doesn't seem like it's for me. Oh, well, because with this germ layer, the way it works is after there's a cell loss and then you recover, you'll actually have even more red blood cells than you did before. So over the process, the whole journey, you're actually strengthened by it. The same way that when I break a bone, I broke my collarbone in high school. Now it grew back and it's stronger than other parts of other bones, right? Everyone knows that analogy. So with this specific germ layer, the way it strengthens you, the same way that we say, my trials and, my struggles strengthen me, that actually happens. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. That actually happens on the biological level with this specific germ layer. So if I'm conflict active, I don't have any symptoms. I'm in conflict. I might be in some chronic pattern or chronic, let's say cell loss or cell necrosis. Most of the times I'm not going to notice that. If I have let's say some issues with my liver, I don't have any liver pain until I start to resolve. Same with most of the programs. So all of a sudden they come to Christ and healing happens. They start to resolve. They resolve identity, and they would get hemorrhoids would be the resolution. This is the part associated with identity. Maybe they start to resolve this chronic worry about their child because they feel the rest and peace of God. So they'd have some swelling in the breast tissue. They resolve the self-evaluation because they realize, oh wait, no, I'm loved, I'm valued. Like Christ's sacrifice that he chose of his own free will, he would have done that if I was the only person on the planet. This is deeply personal. This means something about me. So maybe their self-evaluation starts to resolve and their bone marrow cells regrow back, which Western medicine would call leukemia. but it's really just the replenishing of bone marrow to get you out of anemia. And so a lot of people see these things and they go, oh, that's bad. That's a demon. That's a malfunction. Like, we pray to get rid of, like, for, in this case, let's say the leukemia, right? Leukemia, there's going to be thousands of people around the world that will go in and out of anemia and leukemia all the time, and they're never diagnosed, and they're never scared into more conflicts, and they don't die because their body just replenishes, and the leukemia program turns off. All your red blood cells are replenished, and they go through a natural healing phase without ever knowing it. They might have just went, yeah, I was tired for that season of my life. That was their symptom, and then it naturally resolved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is this outdated, something I'm passionate about, this kind of outdated view of biology in the West, most of the world. And because our religious institutions, all they really have to go off is our Western science, right? And the Western science is completely in opposition to the German New Medicine view, which, if someone were to enter a church and encounter the love of Christ so deeply that they start having symptoms. I mean, they're resolving long-standing conflicts and trauma. Now their body is doing the repair, right? Because it's been an adaptation that whole time. So it has to either get rid of the old cells or replenish new cells. So things like cysts are going to be replenishing cells. Things like mucus and, pneumonia, even diarrhea. This is all getting out the cells that are no longer needed. We don't want to pray those away. We want to be thankful. Yes, like, yes, I'm solving. Thank you, God. Right? Which again,
Totally.
even if, like, I had a conversation with a client the other day. He goes, yeah, I've been praying to God as if my cancer in his hand is my enemy. And I said, well, even if it was your enemy, what did God say about your enemies? To love your enemies. So either way, it's never
True.
appropriate to make that into your enemy. It's just ignorance and naivety. So that's something I'm also, passionate about bringing into people who follow Christ.
Totally. Yes. And I'm so with you on this. And especially having this education and then having the visceral experience of going through a massive healing crisis when I gave my life to Jesus. Like
Ooh, what were your symptoms?
I got really sick, and like so sick that in the middle of the night I woke up and I felt like my head was like throbbing, like I couldn't even stand really, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I felt like like a lake came out, And I also had after a while my nose started bleeding, so there was like stuff in my nose, really, really sore throat. Like I'm talking like, just so much pain. I think it was a couple different things
Yeah, at
that
least 3.
happened. Yeah. Yeah. But so much
Were there night
softness.
sweats too?
Night sweats like crazy.
Yeah, that sounds like, so was it diarrhea or was it just a lot of urination?
A lot of urination, but about a few months after that, I had diarrhea like pretty often. Like it was
Okay,
like,
so
yeah.
4 different, wow, that's amazing. 4 different conflicts. Indigestible morsel, likely kidneys. So kidneys about feeling abandoned, isolated,
Yeah.
totally alone. Makes sense how that would resolve. The nose is about like being in a stinky situation or like sniffing out for danger. So feeling like being in a situation where it felt like maybe it's like a little tense, like tense around the house, or something could happen around the corner and I have to sniff out for it. So something resolving there. The throat, likely morsel conflict if there's night sweats as well. And if it was really painful, probably like strep throat, they might call it. So being able to either swallow something, like it could be like a truth, could be swallow an experience that you had that like I couldn't swallow this, I couldn't, or it could be the opposite. It could be getting it out, being able to say or speak something that you felt you had to kind of hold back.
It makes a lot of sense with that time period of my life. I feel like even you know, a lot of the old ways I was trying to do things stopped working. And I was in this like window of time under your mentorship where I was like, I don't know how I got here. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
none of the old stuff I was doing was working. So I was like, I'm not really, you know, I had to leave my old house. So I was in a place that I didn't want to live in. And like all these different, it was just like a very interesting time, but it allowed me to confront everything head on.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had other miracle healings, like some stuff that didn't even have really long symptoms. Like I had this wart on my finger, like
Mm-hmm.
forever. And I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
from being a surfer and like wearing gear in the winter and it getting all
Mm-hmm.
like whatever, but it would never go away and vanished. I've had like
Mm-hmm.
miracle healings with my womb and
Mm-hmm.
like just not having pain anymore during like my period and like
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I've been dealing with and trying to solve through embodiment work for like so like
Mm-hmm.
trying to control it in a way.
Wow.
Um and stuff like now I don't even really think about it. Like since I have this relationship with Christ, like I'm actually one thing about German new medicine I notice is like I've always viscerally felt that biological resonance, if that makes sense. It's like
Mm-hmm.
even a month ago, I could tell I activated something.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's just more like, oh, I can tell something's going on right now. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like scared of it, victimized by it. If anything, I'm like, oh, okay, here's like something to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm moving and working with Jesus so frequently and so committed to that relationship, I feel like it just flushes out a lot of things that I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
necessarily get into. It just works
Mm-hmm.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's hopefully where German medicine should lead someone. They shouldn't get so bogged down in unless they feel really like on fire, inspired by it, but of the minutia of German medicine, because really the fifth law sums it up. It's all of this is happening for my survival, for my reproduction. It's here to help protect me in some kind of way or help me, continue to survive, even in constellations. We have the megalomaniacs of the world, the psychopaths, the schizophrenic, the bipolar, and in the Christian world, it's like, okay, those are demons. Now, again, I'm not denying that there could be a spiritual reality that is happening simultaneously, right?
Mhm.
But I would never impose that this person, without their own free will, without their own self-deception, is somehow being imposed upon, meaning they're not being controlled like a puppet. They have to be in some form of deception, which if we look at anything that's chronic, there's typically a chronic deception that comes with that. And the side effect of being in a deception is a kind of sin. And when I say sin, it's you're not living in your original design, and therefore you'll look for God, love, connection, safety, all these characteristics of God in the world, and there'll always be some sort of addiction or pattern, right, that comes with that will elicit a kind of guilt or shame or fear, right? Something that is not built into your being, right? It's like God didn't give you a spirit of fear. So in
Yes.
all chronic conditions, we go, okay, well, what is the chronic behavior? What is the chronic way of being that we notice every time these symptoms come online or right previous to them? What's this loop? Because there's going to be some loop of pain and suffering ultimately that is being unreconciled. And when you can identify that conflict theme, what's incredible about German new medicine is I found 98% of the time it's really on point with German new medicine. It's the map is really thorough. So when I'm working with someone and they have swelling, let's say in different parts of their body and like swollen feet, ankles, joints, that kind of thing, I go, okay, we're probably looking at kidneys, KCT, water retention, which happens when you feel like you're all alone. There's no resources. You're kicked out of a tribe, and you have to hold on to, you have some fundamental resources to survive, to not dry out, as Dr. Hammer would say it. So 9 times out of 10, that person is in this chronic, repeating state of isolation and abandonment. Oh yeah, I moved here and and then this community they were too left, or they were too far on the right politically, or then I went here and it's like, a person made a comment about XYZ. So I stopped going to those parties. And it's like, you keep seeing this theme of no matter where I go, it's all their fault, or I can't find a community, I don't fit in. And you see it over and over and over. And it maps right over to their symptoms. Oh, what happened after you didn't fit into that community? Oh, I blew up. I got all swollen. Oh, and then when did it get better? Oh, it got better when I was visiting my parents at home and I felt so connected and I got sick on vacation. Oh, this is why people get sick on vacation, right? Because they're stepping out of their patterns just for a moment. But it's typically not conscious. So they're still going to, go back to the set dial on their subconscious. So anyway, I say all that to say, we, once we get to what is going on in the psyche, which is always going to be some deception that takes them out of their true identity. So it's going to be their man-made adapted identity, typically in response to a trauma. Once that dissolves, then we see a whole cascade of healing. Healing on the level of the psyche, rumination, depression, healing on the level of the body, and then a totally different pattern lived. And that really is what repentance is, right? That's what metanoia, it's a changing of my thinking and acting. That's really what it is.
Totally. Yeah, and I was going to go into strongholds, which is like what you're speaking to here, because the process of ISI can really, like, you're just like moving through it. You're speaking to what it is. And, I'm actually really interested and know I'm going to be doing actually deliverance in a sense. But one thing that I've always understood, and having a background working with people, is what people don't realize is like, the stronghold or the issue is actually where the invitation comes in. So like
Exactly.
the healing, so it's like you always have the power to, again, change your mind, to let go of the lie and to come back into, close that door in a sense. It's like the pattern is the reason. It's not the cause. And yeah, this is just such a powerful conversation to have, because this nuance and like why people have brokenness in their life and pain, it's not from a demonic, it's not the origin of it. The origin is the small parts of yourself that are stuck and haven't been able to grow up, and the places where there's something really true there. It's a part of your it's a part of your soul. It's not something super evil. And by reclaiming that and bringing that up, all of a sudden, first of all, something can't even live or dwell within you when you grow up in that way. And so I'm right with you in this conversation being so important for the Christian community and for people who don't know but hear about it online all the time.
Yeah, and you said it perfectly. It's also right there in the Garden of Eden. It's like you have Eve being approached by the serpent, and what got her to eat the fruit, the forbidden fruit, wasn't force, right? She wasn't possessed. She wasn't taken control of. She was deceived, and deception always requires two. I have to accept that which I'm presented with. That is the deception. And where the innocence is in that, instead of the guilt. See, there's a big difference. We could see that as innocent, or we can then ascribe guilt. The innocence is, if I don't know any better, because I either haven't developed wisdom, because typically when I start to, when the conditioning is laid down on the deception that I might inherit, I'm maybe 5 or 6 years old, right? I'm taking it on from parents, society, authority figures. I have no real ability to discern or even decide what I'm going to absorb. And we know this as well from the science of it. It's like I'm in a theta brain state. I'm just literally taking in everything. I'm a sponge when I'm that age. So it's not even my choice consciously as a 5-year-old to witness a, let's say, argument that my parents are having and then decide, okay, I'm unsafe and the world is an unsafe place. And if I decide it's an unsafe place, then I might go seek safety, right? And if I also believe, let's say my parents, there's no such thing as God. So now I believe there's no such thing as God and that the world is an unsafe place. Well, who do I become when I believe the world is an unsafe place and I can't get safety from God? I try to find it in the world, right? Now, the thing about trying to find safety in the world is that you keep proving it's not in the world. You keep finding the absence of it. You might get a little moment of, oh, I feel safe, but then what is the only constant with our circumstances? They change. So I keep getting more and more desperate, searching and searching for safety. And then that's when I do things like, well, maybe I need to beat this person's a threat. Maybe I need to beat him up so I can feel safe. Maybe I need to dominate and control that person so I can feel powerful because I feel powerless. And we have to look at that and go, is that a sign of someone that's just fundamentally evil or possessed? Or is there a deception that was bought into at no real choice of their own, which is what qualifies the innocence? If they didn't sit there and go, I'm aware I have other choices. I don't have to believe what my parents are saying. I could believe there is God and I can believe this at 5, which no 5-year-old has ever experienced. Then we have to say that that's an innocent naivety that happens. And it's the deception that then, as the side effect of the deception, evils in the world could happen. But it's not because of the person and what's at the core of the person. It's when we buy into deception, we will do things that aren't true, that aren't good, in order to, and this is what it's come from for me for working with over 1,000, probably 2,000 now, clients, is what's driven all seemingly evil behavior is a yearning or a desire for something that they already have in God, but they don't know or they've rejected. So they're always looking for some kind of safety, connection, love, validation. They're looking for that. And they get so desperate that they would, hurt or harm themselves or someone else in order to feel or relieve themselves of the suffering. And so that's where I see innocence. So back to the stronghold, and I'll throw it back to you, is to undo a stronghold, you have to expose the lie, the primary deception from which the addictions, the patterns, the chronic issues, the rumination, the anxiety is built upon. And so, for example, let's say the stronghold is anxiety. It's like, oh, I'm stuck dwelling on a future where, let's say, I'm afraid of someone close to me dying or something like this, and I just can't stop. I'm tormented, right? Well, if that person, if we take that to its end, if you're afraid of someone close to you dying, or obviously no one wants people to die, but if you're ruminating nonstop, that's also not our design. We weren't doing that at 5 years old, right? So we go, okay, well, if that person did die, then what does that mean specifically for you and about you? What do you lose? Or what will you have to experience? What would you be absolutely powerless over having to experience or feel? But ultimately, what would it say or mean about you as a person? Then we start getting to an identity, because no one sits there and it goes, if someone dies, I'm going to be sad. Yes, that's true. But now I need to ruminate on just the sadness. No one's afraid. Like, it's like, have you ever watched a movie and you let yourself be sad at like a sad scene and it actually felt good to like cry in a scene and just feel what you're feeling? No one's traumatized by feeling. Just feeling a sadness can't traumatize you. It's just feeling a sadness. But the belief, this will never end. I can't handle it. I'm going to be alone. I'm never going to find connection like this again. There's something in there that you're ruminating, that is keeping you ruminating, because the rumination is there to help you and say, hey, you're believing something that's not true about that event. Yes, it might be sad. That's okay. But it's only, what's the word I'm looking for? It's only existential when you have these kind of identities, these beliefs tied to that say, no, I will fundamentally lose connection, joy, love, all of the things that are innate in God that I've put into this person. And so it has actually nothing to do with the person. It has everything to do with these feelings or the belief that I'm going to lose, let's say, something like love, connection, and freedom, which means I didn't really have it in the first place because I put it into that person and they had to be alive doing XYZ for me to be free and connected, you see? So once we see that deception and we start to question it, that's why the question is so simple but also brilliant. Is it true that if a person is no longer living, you're not ever going to experience love, connection, joy ever again, that you're going to be in endless suffering, once you start to see through the deception, the rumination has to stop, because it only stays because you still believe, I call this a context, you still believe a context or one of those beliefs are true. And it will stick around as long as you believe it's true. And as long as you believe it's threatening on some level, then your brain's going to go, well, you need to ruminate on this. You need to eliminate this threat. The only way to do that is not to keep that person alive. It's to identify the deception, see that it's not true, and then the rumination will leave you. You don't have to cast it out. It will cast itself out when you see the truth, right?
Oh, I love that. And that's exactly where I wanted to go, is to talk more about how it lets you go. But the rumination is here for you. It's
Mm-hmm.
literally that's actually like, that's ringing in my head. Like, wow, that's so true. Everything is so kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything isn't, it's not so intense, even though it can feel intense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'd love to talk more about how the thing lets you go, because that for me was a really big revelation when I experienced it, because
Mm-hmm.
I heard you talk about it, and I'd be like, okay, cool. But like, we're always trying to like let things go. I'm just letting this go. I'm letting
Yeah.
it go,
Just got to burn it at a ceremony. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
But then I remember, like, I wasn't even the center of the call. I was just going through this like massive healing while
Mm-hmm.
listening to somebody else like go. That's like one
Mm-hmm.
thing I find really unique about your work, is like I've had like several like root healings just by like being able to follow with other people, because we all kind of have the same issues at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day.
Yeah.
And I had this like core piece of remembering, like I could still remember it so clearly to this day. I can even remember the sound of hitting the floor when I like
Mm-hmm.
changed positions. Like, so like I always had this core memory of my parents fighting when I was like
Mm-hmm.
2, and I was like on the table and they were on the other side. And I feel like that was a frozen moment in time for me. And in the new age, I was like trying to work through it because it would always
Mm-hmm.
come up,
Mm-hmm.
But then going through this process with on a live call, it all of a sudden like let me go. And then I hopped off the counter. I felt and heard the sound of like hitting the floor, and I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
grew like years. Like
Mm-hmm.
just like, and like the way that felt, I was like, whoa, that just let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really love for you to talk more about like what that is and like why it's different than how we think it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll start with the traditional process, whether it's deliverance or other modalities where it's like learning to let go, for example. It's your job to let something go is a mm, a fallacy. It's kind of a misnomer. If letting something go, if that requires you doing something, you're not actually letting go because you're doing something. If
Mm.
it's like saying, hey, go do the action of surrendering, where surrendering is where you stop doing actions, right? It's the complete giving up is not something you do. It's what happens when you stop doing what you've previously been doing. So it's a relaxing. It's like if I squeeze my fist really hard and I go, okay, now release that fist. It kind of feels like, and you can actually try this, it's pretty interesting. If I start to open my hand, squeeze for a little while, keep it like tight for maybe 5 seconds, and then start to open your hand and notice how there's like, and try to open it fully. Notice how there's a little resistance there.
Mm.
It feels like effort, right?
I kind of want to keep it closed in a way.
Yeah. So the effort is there because you're undoing a previously held effort. It's not effortful to just let go of something. But because I've been holding on for so long, when I start to let go, it could feel like something I'm doing. But what I'm actually doing is I'm undoing the previous contraction, the previous, in this case, it would be a deception, right? So when I believe, for example, let's use something really practical. Well, in your case, on the kitchen table, right? Did you find the context of what you were believing in that moment as a little girl?
Mm, let me see if I can remember, because honestly, it kind of like I don't
Well, see,
even.
that's another great point, because this is what happens when it lets us go. We literally forget. We forget in that. We'll never forget if someone brings something up. And it's like, hey, did you ever have something like this happen? Oh yeah, I remember that. But it leaves our day-to-day. We literally don't think about it anymore because there's nothing in us agreeing to that identity anymore. We're literally a different person. And so it feels like we have a different past. So old me with the context like, I'm not safe, I'm not enough, is going to find proof of that in my history. As soon as that changes now, I'm going to be looking at my history very differently, maybe even totally different moments of my history. So it'll feel like my history is changing along with me, right?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I could actually give a real-time example. I may not remember what the reason or what was going through my mind at that age, but one thing I noticed throughout my life is my parents are divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So everything always felt separate. It was like mom or dad, even
Mm.
though ironically I shared equal time with them. 1 week mom, 1 week dad, which is kind of unique for my generation. But um, it always kind of felt like there was like I had to like be one or the other in a sense, which
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to. It almost doesn't even make sense logically. It was something I experienced internally.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but now I knew that integrated in my life when it's like my parents are always like together even though they're separate. So like
Mm-hmm.
I'll be on the phone with my dad and my mom will be texting me, and that will happen often.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like for like to other people they'd be like, okay, that doesn't really make any
Mm-hmm.
sense, you know. But to me, I know that there's been this merging internally in my system of like
Mm-hmm.
union in a sense of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, my parents are together even
Mm-hmm.
though they are separate, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, you'll also, if you're feeling put together in you, you'll start to perceive that in the world because, well, we
Oh,
tend to make people in our image in the sense that if I feel, radically disconnected, I'm going to find a lot of evidence for that in the world. And I'm going to go, oh, yeah, this whole world is disconnected. And, I'll paint a whole world in the image of my context. But back to this
true.
example for the stronghold example, if let's say I'll give an example, I witness my parents arguing. And as a child, I have the thought, oh, it's my fault. This is my fault. So there's something deeper than just it's my fault. That might be the surface level thought. We call that the conscious mind. So those are the thoughts going through your mind. Now, if it was my fault that my parents are arguing, and let's say that led to them splitting up, if that's true, what would that say about me as a person? Now I'm going to an identity. This is the core of the stronghold. This is what glues it all together. So if I go, oh, if it's my fault, then I must be bad, right? And then I believe I'm bad. I'm fundamentally bad. Now, if I believe I'm fundamentally bad, what do I have to prove to myself to be true and how I live? I have to create proof of my badness. And why do I have to do that? All beliefs have to reinforce themselves or we wouldn't continue to believe them, right? So if I have this fundamental belief that I'm bad, but I have no evidence for it, there's no way I can hold on to I'm bad. And this is how deception works. You have to keep proving it in all of these little ways for it to have its own foundation, right? So, oh, in that moment I was bad. And then I got into a relationship and this person, started getting upset and we argued and I got angry. And so it's more proof that I'm bad. And we just keep building proof and evidence over time. So we keep reconvincing ourselves, yeah, it's true. Here's all my evidence that I'm just fundamentally bad. So when we say, let's say that produces anxiety, right? The anxiety of, okay, now I don't even want to get into a relationship because if it goes wrong, it's going to be more proof that I'm bad. So you don't sit there and go, hey, let's just say the words, I now reject I'm bad. You don't just say the words, I deny that I'm bad. First of all, that person might not even know that that's the unconscious identity. They might just have a lot of self-blame, like, it's my fault. I did something wrong. But notice these are not identities. I did something wrong. There's something you did. It doesn't say something about you as a person. It says about something you did. It was my fault. That doesn't say something about you as a person. You just said, I made a mistake, right? These are not like moral judgments, really. But I'm bad is a fundamental identity and kind of moral judgment, right? So if for deliverance to work or for it to let go of you, you don't try to get rid of it and cast it out. I mean, where are you going to cast it out to? like over there into the other room. Wait, there is no casting out of I'm bad. As soon as I'm bad is on, it's your whole world. Everything is painted with I'm bad. You can't cast that out because you'll literally create evidence of it everywhere. So the first step is always identifying what is the fundamental deception. And it's always going to be this identity at this identity level, which sounds like an I am or an I am not. So it's what's covering up your true identity. I am bad. So for them to, for you to have that, let's say, let go of you instead of you let go of it, you just have to see that it's not true. I mean, that's the basic mechanic. You have to see for yourself that it's a lie. That might sound simple, but because lies don't have a firm foundation, because that's the nature of a lie, it has no ground. That's what a lie is. There's no actual real evidence. It's fairly easy to see that it's a lie if you actually do want to let it go. Of course, you can choose to hold on. If you don't want to change, you can never change. If you're unwilling to be honest, you won't heal. But if you're really willing to look at it, was I bad for my parents arguing? Was it really my fault? Is that true? Or was that just what I believed when I was 5? Because it was all I could, muster up. Or it was my limited point of view as a 5-year-old. Now, all this proof I've created over my life, is that proof that I'm bad? Or is that proof only stand because I believed that I'm bad? Not because I'm bad, but because I believed that I'm bad. So then every time X, Y, and Z happened, I created more proof that I'm bad. All right. So it's like once you start to examine the evidence, the belief itself, and you can see through it, it's another way of saying once you bring it to the light, into the light, well, the light doesn't battle darkness. It doesn't need a battle. It's just instantly light. It's like when you turn on the light at night, there's no battle to see which one's going to win. It's just instant light. So you have to just bring that all into the light, see through it. And then once you realize, I don't need this, sometimes we think we need these things to stay safe. Yeah. I don't need this, and it's not true. You will stop holding on to it. So to sum it all up, instead of trying to let go, figure out why you're holding on, why you think you might need it, or why you believe it's true. Once that undoes itself, it will let go of you because you'll no longer choose to hold on to it. And that's the only thing keeping it around.
I keep seeing this visual of, because a stronghold is also like a string of lies. And it's like, you're painting it perfectly. It's like the more situations you create, that kind of like creates more anchors into that belief structure. But when you, like, and also like you have discussed, like whenever you pull out an event and see the lie within it, you resist the devil and he will flee. Like there's no way that he can stay anyway, because it's not, that's like actually the thing powering the whole situation.
Exactly.
That's so good. I feel like that will help a lot of people, and just understanding the mechanics of it. And it also allows for grace to flow more and for the inherent goodness that we have. Like, it's so, yeah, I love this conversation. I'm trying to see what else. Why are relationships and community so important in the healing journey? And why do people like how to get people like out of the isolation and cave mentality and healing? That's really big in the new age.
And healing. I mean, like you said, there's always through inquiry, what I've seen is the things that we think are most personal, most private, are actually most universal. So the thing that I go, oh, this is just only me, I'm the only one that is this messed up, or that is struggling with this one thing or this thing, is actually one of the most common experiences every other human is having on the planet. And so because isolation is one of the characteristics of a DHS, of what creates trauma that we can actually see affects the body and brain, one of the fastest ways into resolution, or at least to put yourself in the best position for resolution, is to come out of isolation. For a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, let's say they're exposed to sexual content too early, maybe on like a movie or something, and they don't know how to process it. If they stay in isolation, their psyche is just going to ruminate on it because it literally doesn't know what to do with what it just saw. Doesn't know what it is because we don't have the hormones for sex. We have no idea, interest, inclination for sex at that age. And so we're being shown something that our bodies don't know what to do with. So there has to be rumination. And then either that's going to turn into obsession, repression, or something like premature masturbation. And I just don't know what to do with this, right? So it's going to come out in some kind of way. And the ingredient there is isolation. They don't have someone to talk to process and help understand what just happened. And because their brain is not fully developed and their psyche is not developed, they have to cope with it. And coping is always involves suffering. And so, number one, coming out of isolation is always a step into healing, namely because it's hard to see ourselves when we're just by ourselves. It's like the phrase, you can only see, you can't see the picture if you're inside of the frame. And so when I went even through my, dark night of the soul, you could say, or just like very, like the lowest low, I'd say, of my life, about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago now. This is what really brought me deeper into Jesus, and also brought me into GNM. So I remember coming to this point where I was just going in circles. I was doing inquiry and I everything that I've learned on myself, but because I couldn't see myself, I would just go in circles in my head. And so I said, okay, I can't see what's actually happening here. It's like, I don't have the wisdom, I don't have the sight to see myself in that way. So I did hire mentors at that time. I think I had 3 different mentors at the time, but it was also then just turned into what I prayed for and what I asked for. And what I realized, a big part of it was, instead of trying to seek the wisdom, like intellectual understanding, I was really being called to seek the love of Christ, and then the wisdom and the insight just flowed from that naturally. So it's another way of saying, instead of trying to understand something in order to love or accept something, it's actually the other way around. And so through the love of God, then I was able to understand more of what was actually going on. And instead of trying to skip that part, right? And like, wait, let me just try to understand this to get out of the pain. No, I actually need to go through that into love. And that was a way of coming out of my own isolation without needing to be actually with other people. So I didn't feel isolated at all when I opened and I had my first encounter, real encounter with Christ. There was no isolation, even though it was just me in my apartment. But then from that place, you just have there is a natural wiring for us to be in relationship. So I would say it's like we're designed to be in relationship and in community, and we would only retreat or avoid or fear community if we're coming from a context, some sort of deception, not the truth of it. Because like you said, when you are on fire, for what you're passionate about, for what God placed on your heart, you want to share that with people. You want to be in connection. You want to talk about it. You want to bring that to other people. It's like your only alternative would be to steadily resist doing that. So it's like I can either live in resistance or say yes to the truth, which it always involves other people. Because if God only wanted one person on the planet, there'd only be one, right?
That was such a good answer, because it's like for so many reasons, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's like we are made whole through him. We are like everything, like I know there's so much scripture about this, but it's like it's more a visceral feeling that I get right now. It's like he makes us great. He gives us this energy, this zest. And yeah, like I don't feel alone at all. I've never felt so connected to God in my life. Something that I now can see I was trying to get from everything. Like, and it's like, and they talk about the God-sized hole in your heart. It's like there's this part of you that wants to like sync with the divine, and it's what makes you able to flow in the world. There is no way this podcast would exist without Jesus. And it's so funny because I never thought I'd be doing a podcast about this, a couple of years ago. I would have been like, what?
Uh-huh.
But it was always there. It was always something that I kept hearing that my whole life, like, start a podcast, do this, speak, share your voice. But it's like we are given so much through our relationship with Christ, and that includes the people that are supposed to be in our lives, whatever capacity that looks like.
Absolutely. It's the difference between I'm going to go into community to get connection, and I'm going to go to be in community from connection. So it's like, am I going there to get, or am I going there to extend, the connection that I am in for the joy of it, for the sake of it? And that's a very different relationship to community, because I've seen, especially in more of the New Age circles, because I was big into the New Age for many years, which is such an interesting term. We'd probably have a whole podcast on what that actually means. But
Yeah.
I have a group kind of and some broad definition of it is that community becomes idolized, because it's like, oh, this is where we get our connection. This is where we get our feeling of belonging, is in this community. And so it's like, now the community meets up and it's like, okay, let's do our practices, our eye gazing, our cacao ceremony, like, to get into connection and communion with each other, which is great. There's nothing wrong with connecting and communing with each other. But if the belief system becomes, well, without that community, I'm cut off from connection and, love and support and, like the wholeness. If those attributes are taken away with the community, let's say half of them get up and move tomorrow, then the community is now an idol. It's there's a dependency, right? It's like, I need you to stay here for me so I can feel these things. And I see that. I see the people, they might believe, I just value community so much. And I don't doubt that they believe that. But there's a fine line between putting community as your number one value and God as your number one value, and saying, well, if community is giving me everything God gives me, is God your number one value? Like, is that at the top, or is community at the top disguised as God? And the only way to test that is to take away community and see what's actually there. Is there still connection? Can you still live and love life and feel secure and a sense of belonging, whether or not people are sitting in a room with you or not, right? Because you don't want to make it about this physical act. That's still a very worldly thing that has to change, right? So it's great. It's a bonus. I can bring the connection and love that is in me through God, through Christ. I can bring that anywhere I go. But where I go is not the source of those things, or who I'm with is not giving me those things. That comes from God alone. Now I can just go be in community because it's true, because it's honest, not with an agenda, not needing to get anything, right?
Wow, yeah. I feel like that answer was for me in a way, because I actually would say I've been a part of a lot of communities and held a lot of identity and subtle idolizing, which I didn't realize till recently. And so I've actually become in my 30s more comfortable being alone, but I feel like that can also go the opposite way. So yeah, I feel like that was just really, really gently purifying, and that I don't need to rush, but also to have that balance, right? To have those people in a way. But if you're in that, especially if you're like in a relationship with Christ and it's deepening and you're getting really more like intentionally committed to it, he will put you in a process where he will encourage you to only be in relationship with him, not in the sense that everything gets cut off, but he'll put you in situations where it's like, are you going to rely on me, or are you going to rely on this person or money or this thing? Like it'll kind of, or like like so much attachment to a certain area or a certain home, the things that you're the most attached to if you're in this conscious relationship. it will tend to like be like tested a little bit, if
Yeah,
not removed completely.
absolutely. And then, what I noticed is when I came to Christ in a really big way, I brought this to all my friends. I shared my experience, my
Oh,
testimony. I was in tears. I was like, this is what I'm experiencing. And, most of them just received it really well, because a lot of them, they have their own view on Christ, but let's just say they wouldn't call themselves Christians. And, some of them were afraid. Oh, I'm going to lose Brandon, or he's going to become some preacher off, somewhere and start a church and they have this whole like image of what's going to happen. And, he's never going to want to hang out with me anymore because I don't have the same views, And, we had to talk that out, and it took a little while to just get beyond the fear that it was bringing up, because I didn't feel the fear. I was like, there's no conflict. Why would I not, unless you're going to like
yeah.
hurt, harm, attack me, or, not be in integrity with me in our relationship, then you're free to believe what you believe. That's just what I believe. This is the direction I'm moving in. And, so yeah, it ended up bringing us a lot closer, and we're actually able to find a lot more common ground than not. And I find that if there's an honesty, that's true in most cases. You can probably 98% of the things you can find some common ground on. But regardless, it just helped me. I had like the scales removed from my eyes. Oh, I don't need to do breath work every weekend. And just hyperventilate myself to feel something until I feel something, I don't need to stare into some stranger's eyes for 30 minutes to feel connected to God.
Yeah.
I don't need to like melt, 10 ounces of chocolate to feel the buzz, to feel like, oh, I feel my heart. Like, I just don't need it. I just don't need it. So just like, I was like, oh, cool, you guys can do that. I'm not going to condemn it. I don't need any of those things. I feel so like I would just utter the name of Jesus and feel tears start coming down for the first 6 months of that first encounter. I could just say the name internally of Jesus, and I would be absolutely flooded with the presence of God just while chopping food. And that's all I needed. And the rest was like, it was laughable. It was like, I can't believe I thought. I could just laugh at myself. Like, I can't believe I needed this and that, and I'm traveling across the world to stare into some person's eyes, and it felt good. I felt connection, but it's like, what am I at? Look at all the effort, and it's just right here.
I feel like that needs to be the title.
Yeah.
Travel across the world to look into somebody else's eyes.
yeah, to try to find God, and like drink 10 ounces of chocolate. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, you said that, so yeah. And I feel like I feel like I'm a year and so in, and I still cry all the time. Like, his
Yeah, same.
presence, it never it's like, and you can kinda tell when something's up when you're a little bit like, I'll do something else," or, like, if you're kinda getting a little bit distance, it's like, "Go in," you know? Jesus is just the best.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been such an amazing chat, Brandon. I'm really appreciative for you coming on and sharing. There's so much gold in here for people. And is there anything else you'd like to say, or where can people find you?
I think I feel complete on sharing. Instagram is my main kind of content outlet. YouTube as well, but Instagram is just brandonbozarth.com and at brandon.bozarth, and then my website is brandonbozarth.com. And then we have the school, Bio School, which I will actually soon be doing this month. I will be doing the G&M and Jesus series, where we're kind of merging, these worlds together in a really cool and fun way that I don't think I just haven't seen anyone else do. And I think the German medicine world is ripe for God, because you get a lot of materialists and naturalists, which is just kind of like, nature is God. And there's a difference between nature is God and God created nature. Or you can like, nature is a window into God's nature, right? But it's not the leaf itself. I'm not sitting there going, this leaf is God, thank you, leaf, for creating everything, So it's like, we're not materialists, we're not naturalists. If we are, then we have to believe that we're just clumps of cells with no purpose, mission. We're just an accident, it's just a coincidence, and that is ridiculous, number one, but it's also what leads to apathy and depression and that what we call the meaning crisis. And so it's all well and good to understand evolutionary biology and our German medicine, how biology works, but it's not the place to form our identity. It's a difference between a primal identity and our primary identity. And the primary identity is what we get in contact through Christ. It's what is there regardless of this body and what it does, and even having a body. And so, yeah, for a more complete understanding of not just resolving chronic symptoms, but for freedom in general, we have to really bring God into the conversation. So this is what that series is going to be about, and all of that will be in bioschool.
Awesome. I've seen bioschool. It looks sick. I was like, wow, you're like really doing all of it now.
Cool.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And for everybody tuning in, if you want to ask questions or get in contact, totally happy to ask or to connect with Brandon and he'll direct you.
Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Rachel.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, everyone.